Death has taken our beloved Alan Siegel. Our friends grieve in their darkened world. In their silence, there's lamentation. In their tears, there's loneliness. Lost in their sorrow, may they find the presence of loving friends. Hear them, O God, and be with them. For Pop's love that united us in life, in which death cannot sever. For his companionship that we shared along life's path, and which continues now only through the tenderness of memory. For the gifts of his heart and his mind that brought us joy and happiness, and is now a precious remembrance. For all these, and for so much more, we give our thanks to God. In this time when we're caught between a loss and catharsis, burial is a final gift that we give our loved ones. We feel sometimes in limbo. All the T's have not been crossed, the I's have not yet been dotted, and so when we don't know what else to say, we don't know where else to turn, sometimes the tradition offers us words that will grant us those comforts. The 23rd Psalm has been a comfort to humanity for more than 2,000 years. People who find themselves walking through a valley filled with shadows, filled with darkness, a valley that includes death, sometimes find comfort knowing that they're not alone.
Adonai roi lo echsar bino sheyarbitzeni al mei manuchot yenaleni nafshi yeshovev yancheni b'magalei tzedek yancheni b'magalei tzedek leman shemo gam ki elach begeit salmavet lo hirara ki ata imadi shiftecha umishantecha hema yenachamuni taroch lefanai shulchan neged zorerai dishanta vashemen roshi kosi revaya ach tov chesed yerdefuni kol yemei chayai v'shavti beveit Adonai le'olam lo echsal. Adonai roi, lo echsal.
The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for the sake of his name. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies, and thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of Adonai forever. As I looked around the sanctuary this morning, and I spoke with a 63-year-long friend of Alan's, and I spoke with his machatonim, and I spoke with his children, the children that he acquired through marriage but are still just his children, his grandchildren. I saw so clearly what it means to have a cup that runneth over. What incredible blessing Alan enjoyed having all of you in his life. When an absence presents itself in our lives, especially when a parent steps out of this world, we're sometimes left looking around for our lighthouse, for our beacon, when those impressions on us are left vacant. The psalmist knew that experience as well. He too looked around wondering, where are my matriarchs and patriarchs? Where are my mentors and my inspirations, my heroes? Where am I going to look to figure out what's next? And his answer was, I lift my eyes to the mountains, and there I see where my help comes, from God. So those of you who are going to have to chart a course forward from today without Alan in your life, when you wonder, what would Alan have said? Just look up. Look up, you'll hear the answer.
Esaenai el harim me'ayin yavo ezri. Esaenai el harim me'ayin yavo ezri. Ezri me'im Adonai oseh shamayim va'aretz. Ezri me'im Adonai oseh shamayim va'aretz. Esaenai el harim me'ayin yavo ezri. Esaenai el harim me'ayin yavo ezri.
I lift my eyes to the mountains. What is the source of my help? My help comes from Adonai, the maker of heaven and earth. God will not let your foot give way. Your protector will not slumber. See, the protector of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. God is your guardian. God is your protection at your right hand. The sun will not strike you by day, nor the moon by night. God will guard you from all harm. God will guard your soul, your going and your coming, now and forever. I was with my children just this weekend, and we heard this song playing on a friend's playlist, and I said to them, "You know these words," and they did. These words were written a long time ago, and they are as true as ever. Words from Ecclesiastes. For everything there is a season, a time for every experience under heaven. There's a time to be born, and there is a time to die. There's a time to plant, and a time to uproot what's planted. A time to tear down, and a time to build up. A time to weep, and a time to laugh. A time to grieve, and a time to dance. A time to throw stones, and a time to gather stones together. There's a time to embrace, and a time that we refrain from embracing. There are times to seek and times to lose. There's a time to keep and a time to discard. There's a time to tear and a time to sow. There's a time to keep silence, but this is not that time. This is a time to speak. This is a time where we tell, a eulogy, a hesped, a delivery, an explanation, a frame, a sharing, a gift. You'll hear from Alan's loved ones who he was in their experience, from their point of view. And as you hear about him, there'll be consistencies in how you experienced him, and there'll be some new things that you'd never heard of or thought of before. And in receiving those gifts of eulogy, you'll fill out a fuller picture of the man in his life. And in that way, you'll continue and create a frame through which he will be remembered. We're going to begin by hearing from himself, in his own words. Tamara, would you join us and set these words up for us?
Thank you for joining together to honor my father. At the heart of our service will be remembrances from Alan, from his family and friends, as we mourn his loss and as we celebrate his life and his impact as a loving husband to Claudine for 63 years, as a father to John and I, father-in-law, pop to his grandchildren, friend, musician, and real estate entrepreneur. Dad was a storyteller who loved writing and performing. He'd be thrilled to get top billing today for his final monologue, a 5-minute video featuring clips from interviews in 2013 when Alan was 81 years old, and again in 2020 at age 88. Thank you to Eli and Scott, who collaborated with me to put together this video.
Somewhere in my mid-20s, I met Claudine, and we got married. It was a wonderful opportunity. And then we had our 2 wonderful children, Tamara and John, and had a very good life as a family. Can't say enough good things about my wife and my children. I got into music. I stayed with music, even though I really had no innate musical talent and a decent sense of rhythm. And I could sight read, put a piece of music in front of me, I could read it right away. And I developed a good sound so that I could lead a sax section, at least 3 saxes, sometimes 4. So I could play with big bands, play lead alto as well as play with a small group. I practiced 2 to 3 hours a day, every day of the week. I'm not exaggerating, 6 to 7 days. I would practice 2 or 3 hours a day. Even on the days when I played gigs at night, I would practice. It wasn't just the music, it changed the whole persona, that I adopted, I became. At least I thought I was cool. So I'd walk around with long hair, dark glasses, and my collar up, that was the look. The essence of my work career has been the real estate business. I was in it for 45 years, approximately. And, I've thought about it. It's a wonderful, wonderful business. I became sort of known as an operator's broker. I had a kind of a feel for something that made sense in whatever the market was at that time. No one ever criticized you or told you to do something. You were on your own. You were really kind of an independent contractor, right? For good or bad. So that fit in with my personality. I was straightforward. I wasn't a classic salesman type, just pushing anything that I had for sale. It had to make sense to me to start with, to even talk about it. I was just my normal self. I didn't ever, twist and turn the truth, distort the actuality of the situation, just with the end being to make that deal, I just kind of told it like it was, good and bad. Around the year 2000, 2001, and I took a bridge, and I took to it, I liked it, and I try and play 3-4 times a week. Extremely difficult, challenging game. So when you ask me what advice I would give young people, grandchildren included, just find out what you like, real estate or anything else. Find out what you like. If you can make some money at it, that's good. And if you're good at it, that's good. But you gotta have a passion. Life is good.
That was really wonderful. I just want to thank my sister and everyone else for putting that together. That was so good. I'm John Siegel. I'm Alan Siegel's son. Before I start, I just want to mention my wife and I had COVID last week. We're negative now, but we're not shaking hands today, and that's why we weren't part of the greeting you as you arrived. If you want to come talk to us later, I think that's fine. But if you'd rather be cautious, that's totally fine too. Thank you all for joining us today in remembering my father, Alan Siegel. My father's life is your basic great American success story. He had humble beginnings. He was the child of immigrants. His father left the family. His mother worked in retail to support them. It was not easy. So my father worked as a musician. He earned his own money. He put himself through college. He went into business. He relied on his smarts and his moxie, and he worked hard, and he had tremendous success. He made deals, he made money, he made connections, he made friends. He became president of Bear Stearns Realty, owned a piece of the Steinway building in New York City. And of course, he met and married my mother, and together they made our wonderful family. And throughout, he was always the kind, gentle, unassuming person that we all knew. What was my father to me? He was my model of what a man should be. Because his father had left, he had no such model, but he made sure that I did. He took me to Little League games. He attended my stage performances. He helped me learn math. He played bridge with us around the kitchen table. He took us traveling. I remember my father leading the way through Paris and London, reading aloud to the family from his book of walking tours, something my family now tries to get me to stop doing, but I hope they understand I do it because of the happy memories I have of these trips with my father. My father was known everywhere as a raconteur. He loved to tell stories. Even in his 90s, he was still telling me new stories about his life. Just recently, I heard this one for the first time. He told me that in his days as a musician, he was a member of the Musicians' Union. And sometimes he would go to the hiring hall held at Roseland Ballroom to look for weekend work. One day, who should he see there but Charlie Parker, the famous jazz saxophonist, who was also there looking for a gig for that weekend. My father said that when he saw Charlie doing that, he went home, took his new box of reeds that he just bought, broke them in half, and stopped practicing. Because my father said, if Charlie Parker is scratching around for gigs at the hiring hall, this can't be a good way to earn a living. There's a lesson in that story, I think. And indeed, my father had many lessons for me. He would tell me, never spend your capital. Or, when a man says yes, stop talking. He also said, the great secret in business is to hang on to your money in the down times and then go out and make lots of money in the good times when money is just lying in the streets. But the one I think about most these days is something he started to say later in life. He would tell me, life is to be enjoyed. When I'm tired or sad or frustrated, I try to remember that and to enjoy how wonderful my life really is. My father loved spending time with his friends. He and my mother were always hanging with their friends in Westport or Sarasota. In his 90s, my father maintained a large circle of friends at Meadow Ridge and elsewhere. Since my father's death, one of the things that has moved me most has been learning from everyone who knew him how much he meant to them. And I know he would be happy if he could see us all here remembering him together today. In keeping with his kind and generous spirit, my father told me I shouldn't feel that I owed him anything, but really, I owed him everything. I was so lucky to have him as my father. Thanks, Dad.
Good morning. I'm Scott Lichman. I'm the son-in-law of Alan and the husband of Tamara, with my beautiful family here. I'm so grateful for the 30 years, over 30 years that I spent with Alan, with him as a father-in-law, a source of advice, and a role model. I'd like to share 4 specific memories I have of our time together. Alan maintained very high standards, especially when it came to real estate holdings. When Tamara and I moved to the East Coast and were looking for our first house here in Stamford, we, or maybe Alan, suggested that he join us so that he could lend advice. We soon learned what his modus operandi was in evaluating properties. He would get out of the car and stop and listen for the barest whisper of ambient street noise. And if he heard it, he would shake his head, get back in the car, and leave the agent stymied and stunned. He was very good at music, and I mean really good, in ways that he didn't always take enough credit for. He once played with Tito Puente's Latin big band jazz ensemble, and Tito Puente is no slouch in Latin jazz. And he was on the cusp of being invited to Louis Prima's big band jazz tour when his mother pointed out that he couldn't leave school and he was underage. So he declined the offer, but he was too young to miss it. If it weren't for this moment and his discovering real estate, I think he and I could have had a good role playing gigs in the Catskills on summer weekends. Alan adored his family. He called his daughter Face because Tammy's smile could elicit a big grin on his face whenever she entered the room. Our kids, Eli and Kayla, when toddlers, would pretend to be doctors, and they would wrap and unwrap Alan's knees as he was reading the New York Times, and he would gamely encourage them, saying, "Oh, my sciatica," and they'd wrap his knees again. A highlight of our time together was actually during the COVID period. Just as some members of his senior residence were getting sick, and just before the residence hall imported a year-long quarantine where you could not leave your room for a year, we whisked over to his home in Reading, Connecticut, and we whisked him back to our home in Stamford, and there he stayed with us, Tamara and I, and our daughter Kayla, for over a year. And during the day, we would go off and do our work responsibilities, but for each of the meals, we would get together, and Alan would share tidbits of wisdom on life and business. He would share stories of how he had random encounters with Jackie Onassis and Fidel Castro, separate meetings. And he would sometimes share longings for the routes that he wasn't able to take. And one of them, I think, was being a script writer for Prairie Home Companion, given his predilection for humor. I got to see him in a whole new light during these lunches and dinners, as two near peers, two fathers making their way through life and just trying to take care of their families. And I thank him very much for that, and I'll always remember the joy and the wonder that he shared.
I'm Zara Siegel, Alan's granddaughter. He was a terrific grandfather. Whenever my parents and I would go visit him, he would always ask about us and talk about us before we could ever talk about him. He was very understanding to everyone and is a great role model for me and my generation. His compliments gave me the trust in myself to continue whatever it was I was doing. The stories he told inspired me to strive for my best and helped my love of numbers grow. He was caring, always telling me to keep going and keep trying. He made me feel very important and very loved. I would like to share a short poem I wrote in honor of him. Let the grief swallow you, let yourself cry, but let it help you move on, let it help you fly.
I'm Michelle Gervin, John's wife and Alan's daughter-in-law. I feel tremendously fortunate to be part of the Siegel family. When John first introduced me to Alan and Claudine some 17 years ago, they were incredibly welcoming. And I always felt that Alan in particular really saw me. He recognized how growing up in a struggling and non-idyllic family really motivated us both toward building successful careers and happy home lives. Though Alan grew up in an earlier era and found tremendous success in a male-dominated business world, he always had a very modern appreciation for strong women, his wife, his daughter, his granddaughters. I remember the speech he wrote for Claudine's retirement, celebrating her intellect, her accomplishments and skills as a lawyer. And I always kind of reveled in how impressed he seemed with my career as a physics professor. He treated me like an expert, not only in my field, but in almost everything. He was often wrong, but I was deeply flattered. I've always loved how much John takes after his father. I said this to Alan once, meaning it as a compliment, that he had raised John with such steadiness, thoughtfulness, and strength of character. And Alan took it as a compliment, but not exactly in the way I meant. Because he so admired the person John grew up to be, he was flattered to be considered similar. But he also worried that maybe John had inherited his cautiousness and tendency to second guess. And yes, Alan, he did. But he also has your quiet strength and deep love of family. And it's all these things together, your dignity, your warmth, and your humanity, that make me love you both so much.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jerry Cray. Tammy and Jonathan, Feder and I extend our deepest sympathies to you and your families, but today we are here to celebrate the life of a remarkable person, a Renaissance man of the 20th and 21st centuries. I've known Alan for over 70 years. Shortly after I graduated college, I was invited to join a well-known company known as Pierce, Mary & Greer, which specialized in selling and financing investment properties. I was assigned to an Alan Siegel, only a couple of years older than I, but he was the company's boy wonder sales agent. That was in the fall of 1954. I immediately took to Alan's style, his intelligence, his work ethic, and personality. At the start, Alan and I would meet at the end of most days to review my activities with property owners, particularly those who wanted to sell. Within a few months, Alan sold one of my listings, my first commercial real estate deal. Thank you, Alan. As mentor and mentee, I not only learned the analytical parts of the transactions, but observed how Alan handled clients to earn their respect and confidence. He was very open with them, highlighting not only the merits, but the potential risks of any one deal. Clients appreciated and liked that. During this period, Alan and I became good friends, spending time together after business hours. We played tennis, softball, went to the racetrack, and social gatherings. We even dated the same girl at different times. Back in the day, when there was no internet, cell phones, or fax machines, there was more face-to-face contact with clients. And people being what they were and are, many of these meetings became raucous, and sometimes deals blew up. Alan and I encountered some interesting and colorful characters. For instance, a reluctant seller arrived at the sales contract took out his vest pocket watch and put it on the table and set a very, very short time for the buyer to sign. Otherwise, there was no deal. And the reason for this, he had to catch a plane to Rio for a bridge tournament. Alan and I worked very, very hard to make that deal close in time. On another deal, a block front in Chelsea, there was a wild scene with the buyer's attorney, the buyer, and the seller's attorney. But the seller remained very, very quiet. At some point, however, the seller pulled from his pocket a gun and placed it on the table. The contract went very smoothly after that. Alan was a very funny guy and had a lot of street smarts. He loved to perform at parties. His favorite character was a theatrical agent with a heavy New York accent. He loved to complain of somebody who was funnier than he was. In the early 1980s, Alan asked me to join him at Bear Stearns, where he was head of the real estate department. The clientele was more sophisticated and the deals were larger, but Alan was still the deal maker. After Alan retired, parts of our conversations included previous deals and former clients. His memory and recollections were amazing. He recited specifics of the transaction, clients' names, and even their telephone numbers. His mind was like a steel trap. I was very fortunate to have Alan in my life. He will always be in my heart.
I'm the guy who told the rabbi that I'd known Alan for 63 years. And indeed we did. So it does go back to 1962. And Sue and I had rented a small house in Westport for the summer as newlyweds with a very young child. I was commuting to New York, but Sue was there on the beach making friends. We wound up being friendly with 4 other couples, the Siegels and 3 others. And that friendship is alive and well today. We call ourselves the Westport Group. And sitting out there among all of you are at least 2 more of those couples. It was a grand time. We still get together. We did this past weekend. And when we got together with Alan Siegel and Claudine, invariably someone, maybe it was Alan Milberg all the time, I'm not sure, but somebody always said, "Hey, Alan, can you give us a cameo?" Alan was a friend. That was our relationship with Alan. We didn't make any deals. I know he did. We were just friends. And it never occurred to Alan, I'm sure, to say, "Oh no, I was too busy this week," or "I just couldn't get around to that." Alan would simply say, "I got one for you." And as the afternoon went along, we all anticipated his standing up and delivering his cameo. And when he did, it was magical. Alan, I think, belongs in the pantheon of humorists, American humorists, such as Mark Twain or Will Rogers. You got to add the name of Alan Siegel. It belongs there. He was just plainly that good. And so, having known him for all these years as a friend, it didn't surprise me when our daughter was married and Alan and Claudine were there. Well, the Westport Group, who could make it, were there. And our daughter asked me if I would sing at her wedding. And that was a challenge. I want you to know that. But she hooked me when she told me that the band she hired specialized in the Nelson Riddle Sinatra kind of music that she knew I loved. So I did sing at her wedding. And when I came down from the little stage onto the dance floor, who was standing there? You got it. It was Alan Siegel. And he gave me a big hug. And he said some very nice things. That's because Alan understood what it meant to stand in front of an audience, whether you knew what you were doing or not, and he did, and put yourself out there. So when I needed a friend, someone to tell me, hey, you did it, it was Alan. And I've never forgotten that, and I never will. During the time that Alan was staying with his family here in Stamford, one afternoon, Tammy brought him over to our house. It was during COVID, and we'd all been in isolation, basically, and we just sat on our back deck. I think you remember that, yes. And it was magical. It was so wonderful. We just chatted. No agenda, nothing in particular, no cameos. But it was lovely. It really was, because Alan was that kind of guy. I asked one of my friends over the weekend, what do you remember most about Alan? And he's sitting here today too, Carl Golden. And he said he was a nice guy. He was a really nice guy. And you know, the world needs more nice guys. And Alan leaving us is a loss that we'll all feel, but he leaves behind memories, great memories, that we can carry forward the rest of our lives and impart to others. We can't do a cameo, but we can talk about Alan Siegel. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Uncle Al. I'm the niece of my Uncle Alan, Janine Smith. And I just want to say that today is not only a celebration of a life well lived. Alan Siegel lived a wonderful and full life, but also a family, you know, who gave him the utmost care and devotion and love. Alan was a man who defied expectations, lived boldly, and I would say defined the Renaissance man of the suburbs, although he was in New York City as well. Aside from the rumor that he had a penchant for horse race betting, a habit of which loving wife Claudine quickly cured him, Alan was the great American Horatio Alger's story, as others have said. Growing up in a working class household in Queens, raised by a single mother, with 3 sons, Alan had few reference points or resources to suggest the path to a well-rounded life of tremendous professional accomplishment, a full family life. Alan cultivated a garden that became a blossoming family, with wife Claudine, a superb advocate and attorney for Connecticut Legal Services for 30 years, a loving family with John and Tamara and dog Quill, and all moving to Westport to live in the same town as our own family, Claudine's sister's family. Our families, with Claudine and Nadine, inseparable sisters who also surpassed all expectations of women, becoming a lawyer and principal respectively, raised us with the belief that we could also achieve anything we set our minds to doing. Our greatest fortune was certainly not material wealth or possessions, but the closeness of our families. Excuse me. Like one hand in a knitted glove, forever traveling together, trading Passover and Thanksgiving dinners into countless get-togethers, swapping recipes and endless stories of family lore and love of literature and theater art in a world at large. When Claudine broke her leg, she and Alan moved in with my parents too, and the best friend, 4 cousins, spent endless hours jumping on trampolines together, countless sleepovers and shared homesickness and sleepwalking, frolicking at Birchwood Club together in the ice-cold pool, and yes, playing cards in the club ladies' room while we determinedly ignored the offended and horrified Birchwood women condemning our 9-year-old games in the club ladies' room. What serendipity that our lives were so intertwined. Due to the closeness of our dearest late mothers, Claudine and Nadine, there could be no closer bond than our mothers. And my brother Bill and I could not be more fortunate to have no closer bond outside our own family than our cousins Tara and John. We had countless sleepovers growing up, times together, over alternating celebrations, summer camps together, and even travel. We all traveled to Jamaica together, losing our luggage and laughing endlessly. I traveled with Tamara together in Canada, and we visited each other at our respective colleges, living together one summer in New York City, at Alan's Real Estate Partners Madison Avenue apartment, comforter notwithstanding, with our respective college boyfriends in tow, both moving back to Connecticut together to raise our families. Eli, Kayla, Tamara, Scott doted on Alan and Claudine, as well as John, Michelle, and Zara, also remained close while in DC, frequently visiting, and John has followed in Alan's footsteps in bridge mastery. Tamara and I both loved and adored our mothers, but we're also both devoted daddy's girls, and Alan passed along his fierce athletic competitiveness in tennis, as well as Tamara's own talent playing college volleyball. We shed the inhibitions and oppression of the histories of our grandparents and parents, a new world in which professional accomplishment, higher education, and the American dream were all at our fingertips. Our mother's family had escaped the Holocaust from Belgium. My father's family had escaped the pogroms of Russia, only to face the challenges of the Great Depression. And many of our grandparents, while hardworking, did not have the opportunity to attend college or university. In this new world, Alan traveled with his family, won tennis tourneys as the club champion, hosted chamber concerts, continued conquering bridge throughout his life, and wrote toast, roast, epic dialogues as if he had followed a novelist or playwright's path, rather than that of the president of Bear Stearns Realty. Alan was also the bionic man, fighting any health challenges as a man wrestling with a bear. Alan was a very loving father and husband, had 2 very doting kids, and was a doting father. In John and Tamara, and was always social, cultured, a snappy dresser, and interested in the larger world. Mike and I were always so honored to spend time with Alan because we were in the presence of a great intellect, a brilliant man, a loving uncle, father, and husband. A man my own father felt close to, and parents, as they shared a long history in Westport, a Florida retirement locale of Sarasota, and then an assisted living home in Redding, Connecticut. Alan nurtured our shared love of family and supported the cultured and educated life we have all sought to emulate in his very footsteps. We love you, Alan, and family, and will treasure you forever.
Alan was a very special grandfather. Pop and Nana Claudine were consistently in mine and Kayla's lives, from swimming as little kids in their pool to beating us handily in the game Boggle, also when we were little kids. They challenged us and supported us equally, teaching new skills and showing up to our sporting and school events. They demonstrated their love for our family every time we were all together. Pop was always loving, always curious about what I was up to, and always game to talk sports, tennis, basketball, work, or stocks. My favorite conversations with him were full of stories from his life, finished by a subtle or not so subtle moral at the end, and always very specific details. I'm so glad he got to spend time with Meredith, who I'm marrying very soon. We often joke that she's a card shark, because Pop granted her that title after she won a couple of games of cards and did some high-level shuffling tricks. In the last couple of years, his main message to me was to enjoy life, recognize the privilege we have to try new experiences, appreciate the day-to-day, laugh, and tell stories, while also valuing the importance of hard work. During the pandemic, he moved into my parents' house, sleeping in my old room, and wearing my blue Hamilton soccer sweater. Became part of his uniform. In a life full of connection, joy, and encouragement, I'm glad my sweater could support him the way that he always supported me.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kayla. I'm one of Alan's granddaughters. This morning, I wanted to share with you a few of my favorite memories of Pop. Like so many others have said, Pop cared deeply about our family and about helping us take hold of opportunities to learn, grow, and, as he wrote to me once, participate in the joys of life. For years, he'd pick up the phone and open with, "How's my favorite granddaughter?" When my wonderful cousin Zara came into the picture, the question changed slightly to, "How's my eldest granddaughter?" But I was happy with either title. Pop regularly called to check in with Eli and I, and he'd ask me how my classes were going, if I liked what I was learning, and if I was taking the time to have fun. He even vetted my first New York City apartment from afar. As the family real estate pro, of course, it had to be on a good floor and in the right neighborhood, and what was the cross street again? In so many ways, small and large, Pop made sure his grandchildren were safe and healthy and happy. As my father alluded to, during COVID, Pop came to live with us for a time, and while my grandma, Claudine, had been the expert chef in their relationship, Pop served as my occasional sous chef. And without fail, when we were done cooking and sat at the dinner table together, he looked at the meal he had helped create and exclaimed, "Wow-wee, look at this meal! Who had made this? Looks amazing!" And he'd grin at us. And while the global circumstances were undoubtedly dire, I cherished the time getting to know Pop in the day-to-day. He'd navigate the house in Eli's blue Hamilton sweater, and he'd dive into post-game bridge analysis calls with his partners. Pop was also a very thoughtful learner. Whether in the Westport house or at Meadow Ridge, he'd settle into his red recliner and go through pages and pages of the New York Times. And he was an avid reader, and he would ask for our opinions on politics and global trends and take us very seriously. I was the lucky recipient of much advice and wisdom, and often it boiled down to cherish your time with family and friends, pursue work, hobbies, and relationships that feel meaningful, and make a difference in life if you can. I'm so grateful to have Pop in my life for as long as I did, and I'll carry his warmth, humor, and stories with me.
My father treasured his small family and wide circle of friends. Relationships were at the heart of his life. He modeled living with integrity, listening closely, working intently, giving graciously, and facing illness with determination. He focused on passing on his values and encouraging his family to live life fully, since, as he often counseled, life was not a dress rehearsal. Dad, I feel blessed that we were so deeply and lovingly entwined in one another's lives. One of my defining childhood memories is our playing tennis for hours each weekend. You would set yourself up at the net, the basket brimming with tennis balls by your side, and our lesson would begin. You'd remind me to turn my shoulder, hit the ball on the rise, and follow through. On good days, it all came together with beautiful strokes, long rallies, and laughter. I recall your infinite patience, your appreciation of proper form, and the joy we shared over a well-played point. When I competed on my high school tennis team, I'd look up and I'd see you, the sole fan, standing by the court, wearing your light gray suit and a big smile. Your coaching me in tennis in many ways echoed the role you played throughout my life as an essential touchstone and a gentle mentor. While growing up, I took our family mealtime for granted. We ate dinner together nightly and shared highlights of our day. We exchanged puns with wordplay flying across the table. Only as I grew older did I realize how many people lacked your verbal finesse and your art of storytelling. I also further appreciated how close-knit our family was. I can still simply close my eyes and feel the energy and comfort of a Siegel family group hug. Over the years, our family hug joyfully widened to embrace Scott and Eli, Kayla, Michelle, Zara, and now Meredith. Right from the start, you were all in as Pop Allen, cheering on your grandchildren as they journeyed through life. I feel thankful that in the final years of your life, our family was able to continue sharing meaningful experiences. Thank you to my brother John, to Michelle and Zara, Scott, Eli, and Kayla for enfolding Dad with love. Dad, I admire how after Mom passed away in 2020, you remained intellectually curious, intent on optimizing your health, and engaged with the world, with your friends, and your new community at Meadow Ridge. In your last weeks, you wrote a note to me and John, in which you reflected, and I quote, "The way my family has helped me through the time since Claudine passed has raised my consciousness to the strength and love that binds us together. The greatest legacy I leave my family is my family itself. May we truly be here for each other, come what may, in the years to come." Dad, I'd like to imagine you now reunited with Mom. The two of you are enjoying spirited conversation. You're telling stories, and Mom is laughing. Dad, thank you for strengthening and securing our family with a treasure trove of love and guidance that will carry us forward. I love you, Dad.
Just before the service, Cantor Micah and I were invited into one of those Siegel family hugs, and it was a beautiful experience. I've now come to appreciate the scale of the absence that you might be feeling in your life without him here telling stories and offering advice. The absence, the lack, is what challenges our sense of peace. The word for peace, shalom, is connected in Hebrew to the word shalem, wholeness. So we're going to take a moment and offer these well-known words, Oseh shalom bimromav. May the one who creates wholeness in the universe send that awareness of our blessing down to us. The family that he left you is that sense of wholeness.
Oseh shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru imru amen. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol yoshvei tevel.
The descriptions of all that you received from this remarkable man are overwhelming. They're emotional, they're beautiful, and you recognize the gifts you've received. Now that the exchange in this world is complete, we invite God to step in and to fulfill in his experience the roles that you played in this world. He still has stories to tell. Sounds like Claudine's heard them all, but it's time for God to hear the stories. And so now we ask, El Malei Rachamim, God who's so full of compassion, take over this care, this awareness of, this space for a good man in the world to come. If you're able, would you please rise?
El male rachamim, shochen bamromim, המצא מנוחה נכונה תחת כנפי השכינה. עם קדושים וטהורים, כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים, את נשמת אברהם יקירנו שהלך לעולמו. בעל הרחמים יסתירהו בסתר כנפיו לעולמים, ויצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתו. אדוני הוא נחלתו, וינוח בשלום על משכבו, ונאמר אמן.
God, full of compassion, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to Avraham, to Alan Siegel, who has entered eternity. God of mercy, let him find refuge in the shadow of your wings, and let his soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is his inheritance. May he rest in peace, and let us say, Amen. Amen. At the conclusion of the service, everyone is welcome to join Alan's family at the brief burial service, which is in Norwalk at the Temple Israel Cemetery on Richards Avenue. We'll drive in procession, so please line your car up in the parking lot, and also take a copy of the written directions to the cemetery. The drive there is about 15 minutes. Starting at 12:30, Tamara and Scott welcome everyone to their home for a luncheon and the first sitting of Shiva. Their home is at 58 Hartcroft Road here in Stamford, about a 15-minute drive from here. If you don't plan on attending the burial, you're welcome to remain at the temple as long as you wait until you leave for lunch. And when you get to the Lichmans, please park on the street so the driveway is free for drop-off for people who have difficult walking. A second Shiva will be Wednesday from 5:30 to 7 p.m. at the Lichmans' home. As you heard, Alan traveled a great distance, not geographically from where he began, but emotionally, experientially, spiritually, and familially. And so as we move from this space onto his last stop of the journey in this world, we will serenade him out with the words of Lechi Lach, from the Torah portion Lech Lecha, a challenge to take yourself from this place where you are to your next place where you need to be. We invite those words to take us as well. I'd like to invite those who've been invited to share the honor of serving as a pallbearer to come forward.
Lechi Lach, to a land that I will show you. Lech lecha to a place you do not know. Lechi lach, on your journey I will bless you, and you shall be a blessing. You shall be a blessing. You shall be a blessing. Lechi lach. Lechi lach. And I shall make your name great. Lech lecha. And all shall praise your name. To the place that I will show you. Lesimchat chayim, lesimchat chayim, lesimchat chayim, lechi lach. And you shall be a blessing, and you shall be a blessing, and you shall be a blessing.